I want you to know something. You're not out of place. You've simply outgrown the space. And now you're just stuck showing up somewhere you no longer belong. Have you ever made a decision that cost you your alignment within the room? And it's not because you said anything, but because you chose differently. Sometimes standing doesn't look loud. Sometimes it just looks like showing up, knowing that you no longer fit in where you are. Welcome to Divine Living with Purpose with Alicia. In the previous episodes, we've talked about identity, we've talked about growth, we've talked about what doesn't nourish you and being mindful of the tables that you sit at. But today, we're talking about what happens after you choose differently, what it costs and what it feels like, and how to keep standing even when standing creates this tension and this distance. For me, it all started with a decision. I remember being in an interview process about 8 years ago, and a senior executive said to me, "Hey, if you don't drink around me, I don't trust you." And in that moment, everything just became clear to me. Not loud, not dramatic, but just clear. But I just understood that in that environment, trust was to be tied to behavior and not necessarily the character, right? And alignment would require compromise. In order for me to fit into that culture and that environment, I would have to go against my internal values, and it would require compromise. But I didn't argue. I didn't announce anything. But internally, I made a decision. I wasn't going to trade my convictions just to feel accepted in a room. So I simply chose differently. And that choice separated me. And over time, I realized something. I've outgrown the space that I'm in. Not overnight, but gradually. And what used to feel so aligned to me now, it feels like friction. But here's the tension though. I can't leave yet. So I still have to show up every day, and that feels heavy because sometimes growth doesn't necessarily remove you. It reveals that, you've already outgrown where you are. And there's a cost. There's always a cost. And when you shift, people shift too. When I made a decision to leave the military, some of the same people who supported me, they went quiet, just silent. They used to check in on me, see how I was doing, see what my next move was going to be. But when I told them, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, they just kind of went quiet on me. They weren't negative or anything. They weren't, aggressive. They just became absent, very absent. And what that did was it showed me that, some people can be connected to your trajectory and not necessarily your transformation. So what do you do about that? When the support doesn't follow, the support that you once had previously when you were aligned to a system or, some program or some regime, right? What do? You keep standing, you keep showing up, and not because it's easy, but because it's the right thing to do. And, you don't have to do it by forcing strength. You do it by staying anchored to who you are, your values, anchored in your relationship with God. Because if your strength comes from people, their silence will break you. I'm going to say that again. If your strength comes from people, their silence will break you. But if it comes from alignment, you'll remain steady, even when the room shifts. But this isn't new. The previous episodes, we've talked about Daniel and his identity and some of the internal decisions that he made. He was placed in an environment, right, designed to reshape him, and he refused to conform, not loudly, but performatively, not firmly, but he stood on business. He didn't stand alone to be different. He stood alone to remain aligned, right? Because purpose doesn't grow in compromise. It grows in alignment. Let me say that again. Purpose doesn't grow in compromise. It grows in alignment. So let me ask you this. Where in your life right now are you shrinking to stay connected? What are you compromising just to feel included? Where have you already outgrown a space, but you're still trying to fit in? Standing alone doesn't mean you're unsupported. It just means that you're anchored. So what do? You stand anyway. And if this spoke to you, this is a part of my Faith Under Pressure series podcast. If you like what you heard, Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Divine Living with Purpose. My name's Alicia, and I'll meet you right here in the next episode.